First things first, I'm Jenna Wolfe. That right there is the Hall of Famer Cris Carter.
I guarantee you, if you guys hang in with us and you're number 3, at 6:30, Jenna's going to realize her show is getting ready to start.
I know. I
you
threw
put
my
something up under. What'd you do? What'd you throw up on? What'd you do?
I had a scarf on my lap because it's a little cold in here, and I didn't know what to do, so I threw it, not realizing that's still on camera.
That has to do with us chatting right as we go on the air?
I thought that's what the question was.
Okay.
Yeah.
No
this
problem.
right
Good
here
morning.
is Nick Wright.
And I promised Nick Wright today I'm coming in love.
Yeah.
I love my guy and everything. I promise. I'm not going to do this today.
Tell me.
I'm not going to talk about his glorious hair.
Okay.
I'm not going to reveal to the public that he actually is married to one of my sisters. I'm not going to do that. We're going to have a great show, Jenna.
Right
you
here?
and I, we're doing this, okay?
Both of those were lies. The hair, much to Freddie's chagrin, is not glorious.
We did not mention,
and I'm not married to your sister, but
we
go ahead.
did not
Jenna.
mention your height this morning, so we will lay off all
Kids,
the
drink your milk and
falsehoods.
stuff. If not, you grow up to be 5'7" like Nick Wright.
Well, we are 3 minutes into a 3-hour show, and we've discussed nothing but non-sports. So let's get back on track. Big changes coming from the NFC champs. Klay Thompson might miss Game 3, the finals, but we got to start with Kawhi Leonard. According to reports, the Raptors' all-everything superstar is being slowed down by a knee issue, which stems from him overcompensating for a quad injury. The same right quad injury that forced him to miss all but 9 games last year in San Antonio. This Raptors team begins and ends with Kawhi. So, CC, even though he isn't 100% healthy, does Toronto need even more from Kawhi moving forward?
Well, this is the thing. With Kawhi right now, where he is as far as a health standpoint, every Golden State, all their superstars, like they would like to get more from him. For Toronto to be able to win, I'm not going to say they have to get more from Kawhi. They have to get a different version of what Kawhi can do, because I don't believe with the number of games they're going to play, the type of people they're going to send at him, he's not going to be any healthier than he was in Game 2. I thought winning, closing out the series with Milwaukee was going to give him a couple extra days of rest, that he might have a chance to be a little bit fresher. But you reported, it is the quad that he hurt in San Antonio, but it's not the same injury. People be like, okay, if Tiger Woods, if he said, oh, my back's hurting, everyone's going to go, oh, man, that's the one he had surgery on. But it could, his back's huge. He could be in different areas. So the quad injury, yes, it's the same quad that he had problems with, but it's not the same injury. And most of that injury comes from him getting what a lot of players get in the NBA, tendonitis, and he got that in his left knee. And after the tendonitis and starting to compensate, Jenna, you know, as much as you work out, you're trying to work out the day, your body's supposed to rest, but you've been working out too hard the last several days. Kawhi's body don't have time to rest, and because he's overcompensating, then now the right quad has flared up. But the last 2 series, forget about the finals. Oh, he's going against Ben Simmons, who Nick, since he's coming to the league, has talked about he's an elite defender. He's got elite height, weight, speed. Man, like he's a tremendous defender. Faced him in a playoff 7 games. And then you face the MVP of the league in Giannis in another very, very tough series. So I don't expect Kawhi to get better from a health standpoint, but from a basketball, I expect him to face the double team better. I wish he'd be far more aggressive in attacking the double team, every once in a while splitting the double team and trying to score, compared to backing away from the double team and letting them converge on him, and that leading to turnovers or lack of offense. When he's 35 feet away from the bucket, he's not effective, as we've seen him in the first 3 series that we saw him in. So, yeah, be more aggressive against the double team. Don't turn the ball over. And if you can't, worst case scenario, make plays for your teammates. So I don't think he'll be better. Just be more effective and more efficient in what he's doing.
And it's very hard this time of year, even if you had 22 games off due to load management during the season. You're not going to get any games off during the playoffs. He's already played 20 playoff games. It's hard to be fully healthy at the end of the season. And to Kawhi's credit, he has not brought up injury or anything at all. I think this report comes from someone around him trying to help him out, similar to what happened with Damian Lillard. Damian Lillard wasn't playing up to the standard that he wanted to. He didn't say a word. Then all of a sudden, I would imagine someone close to him reveals, listen, guys, he's got a cracked rib. Remember when he got fallen on? He's got a cracked rib. So somebody that cares about Kawhi is saying, guys, he's dealing with a real... I don't know if you want to call it injury or something that is limiting him due to what his body can do.
He's not as athletic. He's not as explosive.
Right.
He can't get out on the break. He's not the same player, even if the numbers, shooting percentage is going to be a little down, but it's down for everyone.
And that's for Kawhi. That in the second round against Philly and Ben Simmons, he averaged 35, 10, and 4 on 53% from the field. In the next round against Giannis in Milwaukee, he averaged 30, 10, and 4 on 44% from the field. And through 2 games of the NBA Finals, he's averaging 29, 11, and 4 on 38% from the field. The shooting percentage is the only part of the stat line that if that 38 was 48%, we'd say Kawhi's been the best player in this series hands down. It's the Warriors have been limiting him as far as his efficiency and limiting his attempts because he's been getting to the free throw line a bunch, but he's only made 13 field goals in this series. And the other thing for Kawhi, and this does make me wonder about the lower body ailment, is the first half of these playoffs, the part of his game that was remarkable was through the first half of the playoffs, he was shooting 50% from 3. Over the last 11 games, he's shooting 28% from 3. And that's been a big part of his efficiency numbers taking a big haircut is he was shooting way over his skis from three-point range, and now he's shooting below his averages from three-point range.
So if you're the Warriors, how do you take advantage of that? How were you guarding him before, and now knowing that he does have an ailment or something he's dealing with, how do you approach guarding him now?
Oh, they're going to take the ball out of his hand. They're going to make the other players beat him. They're going to say at 1-to-1, we'll take what Kawhi has done. But in the finals, like I haven't seen in the last finals, even with LeBron, most of the great players, it's hard to shoot above 50%. That's the first thing I look at when I start looking at the stat sheet.
For sure.
Who on the team shot above 50%? And when you go down, both teams, forget Toronto, all of them, man, it's hard to shoot. They have a better game plan in the playoffs. They get into you. There's more physical contact. And Kawhi is a pure jump shooter. He jumps off 2 legs on every single jump shot. He never shoots. And that's why you see from deep, it's affected more. That's why you see the percentage, 38% in this field goal percentage. It's affected more. And Golden State's done the best job as far as defending him, concentrating on him, understand what he likes to do, what he doesn't like to do, and forcing him into things that could cause turnover.
And here's the concern for Toronto, as we've talked about this year after year in the NBA playoffs, is who gets worse on the road? Not your stars, but your role players.
The role players.
And now Golden State, they have no reason to change how they're guarding Kawhi. Even though he's averaging 29 a game, because it hasn't been a super efficient 29, they'll take that. If they can keep Kawhi around 30, especially in games at Oracle, and say, okay, Danny Green, Fred VanVleet, Kyle Lowry, who's playing like a role player, those guys are going to have to beat us. I would not imagine Golden State's going to change some of their offensive game plan, particularly if KLAY can't go or if he's extremely limited. Defensively, I don't think they'll change how they're guarding Kawhi one bit, and I think they'll rely on those role players not being as good in Oracle as they were in Jurassic Park.
One reason why the Raptors are able to advance to the finals, because Nick Nurse made great adjustments, especially in round 2 and then the conference final there against Milwaukee. So especially after game 2, we saw them change offensively. They put Kawhi on Giannis. That's when the series turned around. Let's just see game number 3. Nick Nurse, inexperienced as a coach. He has been in, him and Steve Kerr battling, going back and forth. Let's see what adjustment he makes when they go to Oracle, which he's done last couple seasons.
And that change that Nick Nurse was referring to was just being more physical against the Bucks
yes.
and then moving on and see if they can do that against the Warriors as well. All right, we're going to talk about football on the other side. Moving on. Rams running back Todd Gurley was supposed to be the focal point in the Super Bowl last year, but carried the ball just 10 times, 35 yards, reportedly hampered by a bad knee. The team hasn't said much since then, although they did draft a running back in this year's draft. According to reports, Gurley won't be the bell cow back for the Rams moving forward. Those days are seemingly over. Sean McVay talked about Gurley's desire to play at a lower weight this season.
I want him to feel most comfortable, and that's the most important thing. What he feels like he can function at, be the all-purpose back that he's been, and that's where we're at. So if he says I'd rather play 5-10 pounds lighter, and he's going to feel better about that, then that's exactly what we'll do. And I think he's earned the right to be able to tell us how he's feeling, with a give and take. And as long as he's got a why, which I know he does, then we're always receptive to those things.
See, a lot of us went into the Super Bowl last year and came out of the Super Bowl, rather, not really fully understanding why Todd Gurley was so ineffective. Now we have some semblance of an idea. It is that knee that's been bothering him. What are fair expectations for Gurley this coming season now?
Well, this is the thing. This is what you know. When he misses the type of time that he missed late in the season, when they were playing for what they were playing for, you knew something was wrong with his knee. And it all started week number 1, where he had an odd landing on the sideline. And people say, wow, week number 1, 4 months later? Yes, the wear and tear on your body, ultimately, it got the best of him. And you could see from a game planning standpoint, that would be like him in the Super Bowl is like Steph Curry, we're going to play him, he's only going to get 5 shots. Well, what the heck's wrong with Steph Curry? There would have to be something wrong. And that's what Nick was emphatic about the Super Bowl. There's something wrong with Todd Gurley. We need an answer. Yeah, he's got a chronic knee. He might have an arthritic knee. But I don't like the fact that now the coach is talking about, oh, we're going to reduce his workload, but we just made him the highest paid.
It's a
because
big problem.
What you do upstairs has to match what they do downstairs.
But if he can't, he can't.
You made a bad decision. And for me, this is really going to test not Todd Gurley, not Jared Goff. This is going to test Sean McVay. Because last season, I know people call you a genius. Well, a genius, he wouldn't have an offense that the tight end would be one of the least notable receivers. In the NFL, there was only 7 teams that threw to the tight end less than what the Rams did. So now they need some versatility. And I'm going to put that at Sean McVay. Because if Todd Gurley's out there, they could have utilized him better as a decoy. Why would Todd Gurley's absence hurt him? This offense is a speed offense. They're trying to run the ball, and then some type of deception to hit you with the big pass. So Todd Gurley's injury, Cooper Kupp at the slot position, because they don't have a tight end, so then you could clamp down on the receivers outside. I love the receiving group, but they need some variety. They have to get the tight end involved, and if Todd Gurley's on the field, you have to be able to utilize him in play action as a decoy, because the league still respects Todd Gurley if he's on the field now.
One of the things I love about sports is you can lie through your words all you want, but you're not going to be able to lie through your actions. And the Rams' actions, as far as how they used Todd Gurley and then what they did in the draft, screamed from the hilltops, there is a problem here. The guy that could have won league MVP a couple of times, guy who was one of the most dynamic weapons in the entire league, arguably on a team with Aaron Donald, you could have said was the best player on the team. They stopped using him like that. I mean, going back to week 14, 11 carries for 28 yards. Week 15, 12 for 48. He then misses 2 weeks. They get a bye week. He has a month off. Oh, he looks like Todd Gurley again, that first playoff game. 16 for $115. And then what did he do? The time we sounded the alarm bells, that conference championship game against New Orleans, 4 carries for 10 yards, and your guy Butterball, C.J. Anderson, is just cutting through the defense.
Yeah, he likes to be called Butterbean.
Oh, Butterbean, my apologies. 10 carries for 35 in the Super Bowl?
Yes.
Really?
And then you spend a premium draft pick on Darrell Henderson, who, by the way, at Memphis, I know it's smaller school, smaller conference, 1,900 yards, 9 yards per carry.
Yes.
2,200 yards total, 25 touchdowns.
No, you're getting somewhere.
A guy that you think can actually, is not just going to be, oh, we're going to use him in specialty packages. No, you're going to use him a lot. And so I do circle back to the money, because this doesn't just impact the Rams' ability to be efficient against their cap. This affects every running back in the league that's waiting to get paid. Finally, running backs thought they had broken through. Todd Gurley got paid early. We had a run on multiple drafts in a row where a running back goes in the top 10. Zeke, Saquon, Gurley. Zeke looks like a star. Saquon looks like a star. Gurley, the oldest of them, looked like a star after one down year and got paid. And now what? What is being proven out, at least in this minuscule sample, is the teams that say running back is a fungible position, and even if we have a great one, we are not going to pay him because the shelf life is so short. If Todd Gurley can't be your bell cow, well, then nobody can for long term. Then all of a sudden, you don't think that this news is landing on the Cowboys' desk? Just like, forget the off-the-field stuff with Zeke. The saying, man, no matter how great he is early, maybe Emmitt Smith doesn't exist anymore. Maybe the guy that's going to give you 1,200 yards for a decade straight just doesn't exist anymore.
And I think that echo went through NFL teams this offseason. Le'Veon Bell didn't have a bunch of people getting ready to pay him, make him the highest paid running back. Like, that negotiation that he had was far tougher than he thought after sitting out with the Pittsburgh Steelers. So the message is getting around, Nick.
Well, how much worse off are the Rams if they do have to go to a two-back formation than obviously using either Darrell Henderson or someone else they have, or trying to squeeze in Todd Gurley?
Well, this is the thing, Jenna. If you don't have a featured running back, it's either one or two things. Either you don't have a guy that's good enough, or you have a system that you're just going to always use 2 or 3 running backs. When you have Todd Gurley on your team, the Todd Gurley that I know, you realize that you have one of the best 3-down backs. You have a guy that has blazing breakaway speed that really puts fear into the defense. If he doesn't have that speed, if he doesn't have that durability, then I have to change my offense. That's why there's going to be a lot of pressure on Sean McVay, what he decides to do moving forward. I believe that the Rams, the draft pick, the 3rd-round pick from Memphis, he's a legitimate NFL player. A lot like Alvin Kamara when they drafted him behind Mark Ingram. Oh, is Mark Ingram playing for the Saints anymore? No. Because the mayor has taken over. Yep. He's had a couple good years, and that's the way this goes in the NFL. So this, to me, is Todd Gurley's most important season.
But it also speaks the fact that that running back was available in the 3rd round. He's first-team All-American. He led the all of college football in yards per touch, and he's available in the 3rd round because people think running back is a position you can find a guy. They hesitate to spend high draft picks on him, and this is only going to lead to that more. When you ask what it does to the Rams, what was the signature game of the NFL regular season? 54-51, supposed to be in Mexico City between the Rams and the Chiefs. There was a player on each of those teams. Yeah, people love the coaches, and everyone loves Mahomes. Some people love Goff. You've got Sammy Watkins, you have Brandon Cooks. There's a player on each team that makes those teams special. For the Rams, it was Todd Gurley. For the Chiefs, it was Tyreek Hill. For 2 very different reasons, both teams have to be thinking long-term. Can these guys not be in our long-term plans anymore at that level? And what does that do to the 2 most dynamic offenses in football? I hope Todd Gurley gets back to being Todd Gurley, but it seems like the Rams are coming to the realization that that probably is not going to happen. And it seemed like just that long since he was maybe going to win league MVP.
If he's not 100% too, Jenna, I don't believe they have a chance to be a top 5 offense. I don't believe they're a Super Bowl contender if they're not a top 5 offense. So a lot of that depends on Todd Gurley and his overall health.
All right, moving on. According to reports, Kawhi Leonard is being slowed down by a knee issue, which stems from him overcompensating for a quad injury. The same right quad injury that forced him to miss all but 9 games last year in San Antonio. So, CC, even though he's not 100% healthy, does Toronto need maybe more from Kawhi moving forward?
Well, be more efficient at what he's doing. He's not going to be healthier. I think that's one of the disappointing things about Kawhi in his camp. They thought after they closed out Milwaukee, he'd have a few extra days of rest and he'd be healthier coming into this finals than he's been the last couple of weeks. He hadn't been. He's been hampered. The knee is more of an issue than the right quad. And even though it is the same quad that he had an issue with in San Antonio, it's not the same injury. I did get a clarification from his team on that last week.
Well, and you mentioned last week before the finals that Kawhi had been dealing with some tendonitis. That was the main thing that was hampering him in these playoffs, and that they hoped he would be healthy going into the NBA Finals. As you can see in these highlights, by the way, the injury is not hurting his power. Watch him just bully Klay Thompson there. Okay, you can just fall down.
Yes.
I think he broke Kevon Looney's collarbone.
Oh, yeah, Kevon Looney ran into him
and broke his collarbone. Now not going to play again. Where it's hurting Kawhi is on his jump shot. He's shooting 28% from 3 over his last 11 games after shooting 50% from 3 in the first 9 games of the playoffs. The efficiency is where these injuries are slowing him down.
All right, finally, with all the injury talk surrounding Golden State, Steph Curry has quietly led this team through the start of this series. As the Warriors head back to Oracle for Game 3, Steph is the heavy betting favorite to win MVP, with Kawhi and Draymond having the next best odds. Nick, has Curry been the most valuable player through 2 games?
It's very close. I feel like through 2 games, Draymond was the most valuable player in their win. Steph was the best player in game 1, but they lost. So how do you associate value with a game they lost, right? So Draymond had triple-double in the game they lost, but it was a pretty hollow triple-double. And if you watch it, he didn't have the impact he typically has on both ends of the court. I also think that for Steph, game 2, the game they won, man, I know we're going to talk about Iggy. We've talked about Iggy and the helping Steph's legacy and things like that. The idea that how results-oriented we are in these discussions. Steph in the fourth quarter of their win, his zeros across the board, didn't even attempt a shot, and had just a bonehead technical foul. A technical foul that is indefensible for any player, much less a player that has to know better. A player who's been kicked out of a finals game before for throwing his mouthpiece and hitting a fan. Like that. So because they won, we don't really care that Steph had zeros across the board and 0 field goal attempts, which seems incomprehensible in the fourth quarter of game 2. To me, if it ended today, if it's like, hey, pick your MVP, I would pick Draymond. I think Draymond has been the most consistent warrior, and I think Draymond in game 2 was the most valuable warrior. Go ahead.
There's just something funny to the fact that Steph would play in an NBA Finals and Iggy would win an MVP and Dre would win an MVP and one of the greatest shooters to ever play the game wouldn't win an MVP in the Finals if that were the case. But I guess he's got to do more.
I mean, there's tremendous irony to it. Right now, to me, Draymond has had a bigger impact because what he's done on the defensive end. You just talked about it. Kawhi. Part of the reason why are the bodies and everything that they're throwing. And we need to be able to give them some type of credit for that. When Steph didn't win it in their first final, Iggy, you're not giving it to Iggy because he's scoring the basketball. You're giving it to him because on both ends of the court, you felt like he was the best player. It's really hard after 2 games, especially when there's no advantage. If the Warriors were up 2-0, then we could make a case for, oh, man, this guy. Listen, this is wide open. But the reason why the percentages are higher for Steph is because he's the only offensive player that they have.
Right.
KLAY is hurt. They know that. That's baked in there. So KLAY might not play game 3, so that eliminates him. Kevin Durant's already going to miss 3 games. That eliminates him. Who else is available? They can't give it to Steve Kerr.
And so there is an element of, for these odds, it's not just what they've done, but a prognostication on what they will do moving forward. By the way, it's 1-1 because of the order. You talk about this all the time. What if the games were flipped? What if Golden State won game 1 and Toronto won game 2? Then would we be saying Kawhi should be the favorite right now? Because Kawhi, even though he hasn't been efficient, he's still averaging 29 points per game in this series. He has still matched Steph's offense while bringing to the table better defense. What's unfortunate for Steph is none of this is a legacy discussion. If he had just won the Finals MVP, he probably should have in 2015. And I think the audience needs a reminder because it wasn't well reported on in the moment. It's only been well reported on the years since. What happened in that 2015 Finals? The year he won league MVP, averaged more points per game in the Finals than the regular season and didn't win it. 11 ballots are cast for Finals MVP. They come in. It was 4 for LeBron, 4 for Iggy, 3 for Steph. And they can't have a co-finals MVP.
And the NBA, a number of years ago, they said they're not going to have a loser be named MVP.
And that's not a rule, but it's essentially become a rule. Because if it was ever going to happen, LeBron averaged 36, 13, and 9 that year.
Yeah, shooting what from the field?
Well, that year he didn't. He shot 58% the year before in the finals. That year he had a lower percentage because he was the offense unto himself. But he was 36, 13, 9. So it was 4, 4, 3. And so what's been reported is that the 7 people that voted for Warriors came together and said, guys, we can't have co-MVPs.
Right.
We all obviously think it should go to someone on the winning team. Who's it going to go to? Right. And since Iggy had a 4-3 vote edge, they said, okay, we'll all vote for Iggy. So in the final balloting...
I didn't know that.
Right. So the final balloting shows Iggy 7, LeBron 4, Steph 0. But the real balloting was 4-4-3. So if one person on that initial ballot, if you will, had gone Steph instead of Iggy or had gone Steph instead of LeBron, then Steph has that first Finals MVP, and this is all moot. I still think Steph is I think the best bet is Steph to win it. Even though Draymond, I said, has been the most valuable, I think if it's close at all, Steph is going to get, I don't want to say sympathy, that sounds condescending, but Steph's going to get the Lifetime Achievement MVP award vote, which I think is totally understandable.
But also, KLAY, we're not sure about yet. We don't know what's going on with KD. There's so much more game left in this series. Anything can happen. We're only 2 games in, but it just feels like so many moving parts. So this is
whoever has the best game number 3, obviously they're going to have an advantage in the series. But I believe between Kawhi, and Draymond. Whoever has a better game in their team wins, they're going to be the front runner.
All right, let's talk more about those Warriors and a name not synonymous with injuries in recent years, but Klay Thompson is questionable for Wednesday's Game 3 with a strained hamstring. Kevon Looney is likely done for the series and therefore the season with a chest fracture. Still no word on KD's status, and Game 3 is tomorrow. So, Cece, let's focus on Klay. How would his absence change Golden State's offense?
Oh, it's going to change their offense. I'm just going to start. Let me start on the defensive end first because I believe it's very important.
Okay.
Steph Curry is going to have to spend more minutes guarding their primary ball handler or scorer from the outside. And that might be Van Vliet. It might be Kyle Lowry, whoever gets hot, because you can't depend on Quinn Cook to be able to guard anyone. He's a knockdown shooter. So now let's go on the offensive end. I believe Quinn Cook should be the starter. They're going to run a two-guard offense, him and Steph. I believe Quinn Cook will play a little more off the ball, and you cannot allow him any type of space. You have to force him off the three-point line, force him into the lane, make him a playmaker passing the ball, not a knockdown shooter. And I believe it will affect their offense. I believe they will attack both the guards. I believe that you'll have more post-up situations from the guards with the Warriors because they can't be an elite defense when they have inferior guard play on the defensive end from Steph and from Cook. I believe Steve Kerr, they move the ball more. When they get injuries, what they do is get everyone involved more to try to make the court open up, try to get some easy looks, try to get some backdoor because they know they need someone else to be able to score between 14 to 22 points. Those points that Klay, they're not going to be able to replace him from a style standpoint, but we need to be able to replace those buckets some kind of way. Let's get out in transition before they get their defense set. I expect Steve Kerr to do a number of those things to try to get the win in game number 3.
So one thing that I've, over a few years, learned to listen to you very closely on is injuries and how it affects the athlete. And what you've talked on and off the air about Klay's injury is even if he forces his way in the lineup, even if he can play, he's not going to be the guy that we're used to running baseline to baseline.
No, we can't expect that.
And so here is what I think for the Warriors, that even if he can't be that guy, him being on the court is incredibly valuable for them. Because even if he can't run around, even if they just say spot up, he's still going to be able to shoot. Klay be able to shoot from a wheelchair. So just him being on the court will open things up more. Him being on the court will make it to where you can't play that box and one. Not that they were necessarily going to unveil that again for Game 3. I think him being out there in any capacity is the only real chance they have against Toronto in Game 3, assuming Durant doesn't play. Since Durant's gotten there, they've played 8 games, without Klay and KD in the lineup. They've actually won 3 of them. The 3 teams they beat were Phoenix, one of the worst teams in the league, Atlanta, one of the worst teams in the league, and then New Orleans this year, post-Anthony Davis trade fiasco. And so they do have 3 wins, but against some of the worst competition in the league, and what all 3 of those teams had in common was some of the worst defenses in the league. How you're going to crack the #1 playoff defense in Toronto if it's Steph and friends, unless all of a sudden, again, maybe Iggy's going to go Game 6 against the Rockets and just get open threes and knock them down. That is a game where Draymond would have to be Game 7 of the finals, Draymond, hitting threes, damn near triple-double. Forget 20-plus points. He had 32 in that game. The Warriors beat you with their offense. Their defense has been underrated over the last few years. Their offense has been record-setting. If it's down to just Steph, they become incredibly guardable. So how do I think it impacts the game? I don't think they can win if Klay Thompson doesn't play. If he plays and isn't effective, I think they have a chance just because it opens the rest of the offense up because you have to respect him so much.
If I'm Golden State, I'm putting a lot of emphasis on game number 4. Because I'm trying to make this a mini series. Even though I don't have home court advantage, if I don't have Klay available for Game 3, I have to concentrate and try to get him and KD available for Game 4. And then now it's the two-time defending champ trying to win 2 out of 3. Now, who wouldn't take that chance? If you look at all their injuries, starting center, out, best scorer, KD, out. Now Klay might miss some time. For them to say, if they can say after Game 4, wow, guys, we've made this a mini series, I believe it's a huge advantage. Something else to watch from Toronto's side. Watch OG Anunoby. Watch if he comes back. He was activated for game number 2.
Didn't play.
Didn't play. Has rejoined the team and practicing. Hadn't played since April. Watch if he joins the team, because KLAY going out and then maybe the Raptors getting another defensive help. I believe Toronto, I believe they can force Golden State to play their type of tempo in games number 3 and 4.
And then quickly, with Looney out, that's going to put more pressure on Boogie, on Bogut.
Listen, Boogie in particular, Boogie showed he could play those 28 minutes.
Yes.
They're going to ask him to do that again. One small note, you mentioned if you're the 3-time defendant or the 2-time defending champs, you'd love to have a best of 3 to go for a 3-peat. I don't necessarily disagree with you. I'll tell you this much, though. Masai Ujiri in Toronto, you tell him beginning of the year, to win a championship, you got to win 2 out of 3, and you have home court. They would have signed up for that in a heartbeat.
Oh, yeah.
So that could be a scenario. The Warriors' injuries, the Raptors' history, both teams would say, okay, 2 out of 3. The Warriors trust their championship pedigree. Toronto trusts their home court.
And if you told them it's 2 out of 3 with maybe no KD and a hampered Klay Thompson,
Absolutely.
they definitely would have taken that.
Sign
All right,
me.
take a break. Coming up, is Kawhi coming up short in the finals? That is ahead on First Things First. Back here, First Things First, NBA champ Antoine Walker joins the show. Good morning, Antoine.
Good morning, Jenna.
Welcome back, man.
Yes, sir.
Things are heating up in the NBA, unlike what's happening in the studio this morning. Chile.
Jenna's on a Cal Ripken streak of complaining about the temperature in the TV studio.
I wonder
Newsflash,
how we
America,
could
TV
fix that.
studios are cold.
Wondering how that could get fixed. Let's talk some Andre Iguodala. He had the clutch, risky, improbable 3-point shot to seal Game 2 for the Warriors Sunday night, evening up the series with Toronto at 1-1. Iggy has been a key cog in all 3 of the Warriors championships, quietly working through aches and pains and age. He addressed his motivation to win a 4th title after Game 2.
Everything you guys have overcome, all the championships you've won, what motivates you to keep going to play hurt at this point in your career?
I like Steph. He's a good dude and good guy to be around. That's really the only reason why I like playing basketball. That's the only reason why I play.
Did that run
You want him to win? Like that's what it is?
Yeah, I've never seen him in person. Like, so such a good person to ever get some backlash or whatever from his peers, because they're so jealous of what he has. So it's kind of sticking it to him. And so I'm trying to, whatever it takes to protect his legacy. I'm all for it.
All right, Antoine, what do you make of Iggy playing for Steph? Although it kind of felt like he came up with an answer and then was like, yeah, that's the answer.
Well, it seemed like he was joking at first, and then I started.
Yeah.
And then it kind of seemed like he was serious. I know Andre really well. I've worked out with him plenty of times in Chicago. I don't believe that's true, all 100%. But I believe it's, you get around a guy and you can like him. I know him and Steph probably play golf together. Guys was a big golfer. They probably spend a lot of time off the court together. Both of those guys are married. They have kids. So all those things can play a part in what goes on. And
Age?
I wouldn't really say age.
No, I'm just saying having guys that around the same age where you do the same things.
Oh, yeah, without question.
Because when you went to the family, I just said, yeah, they've been in the league. Been
in the league a long time. Both married with kids. They're not out at the clubs at night yet.
Yeah, but I also believe, too, Andre Iguodala's been exaggerating a little bit. You got $33 million left on the table. You plan for that. You got to make sure you get that. And then also, I think he's a competitor. I mean, I know Andre's a competitor. He's got the opportunity to be a part of a special team. He's been a huge part of what they've done. They went out their way. Kevin Durant took a pay cut for him to come back. But, hopefully we're taking the comment, and we can take it any way we want to, because you can now KD out of it. You didn't talk about KD, about Klay, about playing with Draymond. I mean, you're playing with other all-stars with big egos, so that could get taken out of content. But they won the game and everything. But I hope he's not playing for Steph's legacy. Steph's legacy is already taken care of. He don't need nobody to play for his legacy. I think Steph has done a great job of that, and he's only going to get better and better. So I hope he's not doing that.
I think that Steph Curry, and I've been knowing Steph since he was a kid. My brother was a head coach at Toronto. His dad was on the team. I went to camp with his dad, 5-star basketball camp in the 80s. So I've been knowing his dad since he was in high school and I was in high school. So Steph, it's an amazing story. They do have a great family. It's a lot like Peyton Manning and the men. They are Peyton Manning family, Archie,
Eli,
they are
Archie.
royalty
Yep.
in the NFL and in the NBA right now. There's a couple families that are royalty, and Steph Curry and that family, they are. I can understand that. He is a great guy. I played with a lot of great guys. But let me just tell you, when I get up in the morning and I got to sacrifice my body and what I'm eating and type of training and weightlifting, I'm not thinking about one of my teammates. I mean, Jake Reed and I, man, we broke the NFL record, 1,000-yard season. Jake's my guy. Jake fired his agent, hired my agent, got Jake paid. Jake's family's taken care of for the rest of his life, a lot because of me. But let me tell you something. When I was going across the middle, I wasn't thinking about him. I was thinking about myself. Things in sports happen too fast and in real time. And I'm just going to tell you, money's not a big enough motivator to get you up. You can't tell me I'm playing for someone else's legacy. That's what makes me focus. No, that's impossible. So I can understand, and I can understand being a good teammate, and I can understand saying things sometimes so players hear it, also the owners hear it, because there's a few staples to this team. That's Steph Curry and Iggy. People talk about KLAY leaving. People talk about Draymond leaving. People talk about KD leaving. No one ever talks about, so why would I open that up and be like, you know, yeah, I love that guy. I'm going to protect that guy. I got his back. Yeah, there has been that in the NBA for a long time, but you can't tell me you're motivated. You're married, you got a couple kids, but this is my motivation. I just call a little bull on that.
Okay, so two quick points. One, when he says I'm playing for his legacy, whether we take that to be literal or not, what we can all agree on is how Iggy plays, how everyone plays, has to do with the narrative surrounding everyone else. And by that I mean Iggy took that shot and he made it. If he missed it, and the Raptors rush up the court and hit a three, you know what that narrative is?
Steph Curry got that technical.
Steph got
that extra
the technical.
1 point.
Steph was 0 for 0 from the field in the fourth quarter with 0 points. He was in the first quarter, didn't make a basket. In the fourth quarter, didn't even attempt a shot. And is this another NBA Finals where Steph? So of course, how Iggy plays affects Steph's legacy, fairly or otherwise. But take the legacy part out of it. What I found most interesting about the comment was the second part, where he said, I've never seen a guy as disrespected by his peers. And that, I think Iggy is 100% correct on. How many guards throughout the regular season do we talk about when they're matching up with Steph that do not have his credentials, that are clearly not as good as him, that we say, they believe, Russ believes he's better. Chris Paul's believed he's better. Dame believes he's as good. There is an element of Steph because of his style, because of his size, and I would argue because his dad was in the NBA. And he didn't grow up tough the way so many NBA guys did. There is an element of jealousy, resentment, and, man, he's not better than me, even though he is. Even though he's a more effective player, Steph deals with that Durant doesn't deal with, LeBron doesn't deal with, hell, Harden doesn't even deal with. I think that's what Iggy's talking about.
I'll get a little pushback on you and disagree with you. Yeah, I've been watching this game a long time, and disrespect about the game has always been a part of it. My guy, Isaiah Thomas, you know what he said about Larry Bird? That dude wouldn't get credit if he was black. So you're talking about disrespect. Now, Isaiah said he didn't mean it that way, but it's well documented. It was said. Isaiah eventually ended up apologizing. So Larry Bird, one of the best players we've ever seen, he got disrespected. Even from the beginning, Bill Russell, they didn't respect it. There's not enough teams. He's playing with the Celtics. Wilt Chamberlain, they didn't respect him. Kareem, didn't respect him. MJ, he had to quit. Didn't respect him. LeBron recently. That's part of it. So you taking it personal, thinking, it's only happening to my guy. Wake up, man. Look at NBA history. This is a big part of the NBA.
And I think you got to look at it like this. If I'm Andre Iguodala, even with Steph, other players, the Westbrooks, the Damian Lillards, Kyrie Irving, those guys don't believe that Steph Curry is a great defensive player. I think that's what it really comes down to. They feel like, he can't guard me, so I'm better than him. But not knowing what Steph actually brings to the game. He's arguably going to go down as probably one of the top 5 best point guards to ever play the game. And it's changed the game. I mean, we never thought that style of play would win a championship where you could shoot 10, 12, 13, 14 threes and win an NBA championship. He changed that. He's one of the best tough shot makers that we got in the league. He makes tough shots. So he has his offensive game is different than theirs. He does it a different way than they do it. And some guards in this league, Chris Paul's, the Westbrooks, they play both ends of the floor. And let's be honest, Steph is not a guy that's a defensive player. They hide him very well. Klay Thompson takes the responsibility of guarding most point guards, and they hide Steph on the defensive end. So I know where players' egos come in at. They like, he can't guard me. I can score with him.
I think that is absolutely there. And the other element where Iggy says he gets disrespected, that's differently than the guys you listed. And this isn't speculation. I know this. Top guy that would be on everybody's MVP ballot year after year, the feeling is, why does Steph get to be the underdog? Why is he discussed as the underdog when, of all the guys in the league, of all the great players, he's the guy who came from the infrastructure to help him succeed more than almost any of us? There is similar, Grant Hill dealt with this to a degree as well, which is the NBA is not a league of a bunch of guys that were rich kids. And the fact that Steph and Klay, the two of them combined, the Warriors were initially the lovable underdogs. And these two kids, both their dads played in the league. Both them came up rich. Both them came up in situations different than almost all the other top players. There is a level of resentment that is real from other guys in the league, and I think Iggy knows that, and I think that's one of the things he's tapping into.
I get the disrespect. I could do your job easily, but I sit here every day.
I left out Steve Nash, too. Forgot.
Back here with Antoine Walker, we're talking Kawhi Leonard. According to reports, the Raptors' all-everything superstar is being slowed down by a knee issue, which stems from him overcompensating for a quad injury, the same right quad injury that forced him to miss all but 9 games last year in San Antonio. This Raptors team, we know this, it begins and it ends with Kawhi. So, Antoine, I ask you, even though he's not 100% healthy, does this Raptors team need more from him moving forward?
I don't think they need more from him. I think they need him to play smarter. And what I mean by that, he has to take a page out of Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, LeBron James' book, where you got to get your teammates involved early, and he has to pick his spots. He has to go back to the game one mentality. I don't mind if he gets 14 shots. As long as he's passing the ball, being a willing passer, making other guys try to score the basketball. We know he's capable of getting his own shot when he wants to, even though he's hobbled a little bit, because he got to the free throw line 16 times. So he can still do that, but he has to force these other guys to be aggressive. He needs some scoring. He needs Kyle Lowry to step up, averaging 10 points, shooting 30%, and obviously right now in the finals. He also needs Marc Gasol to be consistent and to be aggressive. And then the missing link, and for some reason, we're not talking about him enough. Serge Ibaka has to come to play.
Yes.
You know, he's another guy that's been there. He's played in meaningful playoff games. He understands the moment. They need him to step up and play well.
He can give Boogie and give Draymond some problems with his length and ability to be able to play defense, but he just hasn't been. Can he be consistent?
But I like what Kawhi's at offensively. Obviously, you would like to shoot a better field goal percentage, but he's getting to the free throw line. I think he just has to pick his spots. If the game is going smooth and, you know, it's a 2-4 point game, he doesn't have to force it, take on the double teams. He can still be a willing passer, make sure guys get shots and keep them involved, and get himself prepared for the fourth quarter where he can take over a game. I think, you know, game 2, he had to force it because they struggled so much to score the basketball in that second half, so he forced it a lot. But he still can be a willing passer and still be able to get his shots, especially if Klay ends up not playing.
With all the shooters that we have in the NBA, very seldom do we ever see teams double team, especially perimeter players, and force the ball out of hand. All these players, KD struggled a little bit with it. He's 7 foot, so he can pass over it. Steph struggles all the time. Kawhi has struggled with it. From a basketball standpoint, with Kawhi getting double teamed, give me something else that he can do where he can be more aggressive. Because, man, it seems like he's backing away from the double team. Do you think he should be doing something else?
I think he should take the ball out of his hands and post up.
Okay.
And really try to post up to about the 15-foot area where he's got a shorter, he can get to the basket, open up, shoot his 15-foot jump shot. We haven't seen him do a lot of that. His fade away. He's got a great mid-range game. Get to your mid-range game, especially if you hobbled a little bit. It's going to be very difficult for him because he doesn't go fast to split the double team. They do a good job of corralling, especially when it's Draymond Green, and he's got great hands. So he's got to do more posting up. And this is the thing. Nick Nurse is supposed to be the offensive guru. That's what they hired him for. He has to figure that out because you're putting a lot of pressure on Kawhi to ask him to bring it up, walk it up 94 feet, and then try to make a play.
And I would argue Kawhi needs, on Nick Nurse's side of it, get him some easy buckets out of a timeout. Like, how many times in these finals, I know it's only been 2 games, but does Kawhi has he cut back door and just got an easy layup or a dunk? Like,
Well, when you get into the playoffs, Nick, we know all the sets. You
Right.
can't come up with no new play we don't know. Help side defense is so much better. So many guys are far more engaged in the defense. That's why the struggle in the playoffs becomes real, because the other team is far more familiar with you than any other time during the season.
But the only easy looks Kawhi's getting is from the free throw line.
Yep.
And fortunately, he has been spectacular from the line. He was 10 of 12 in the first game. He was 16 of 16 in the second game. So he's 26 of 28 from the line because he only made 13 shots in this series. He's only shooting 38% in this series. This is where it gets harder for everybody. And the Warriors have done a spectacular job of making life hard on the other team's best option. Like maybe some of that James Harden slander everyone was engaging in after round 2. After we see what happened to Damian Lillard, let's see what happens in these finals to Kawhi Leonard. We might realize, hey, the Warriors, their coaching staff, their players, the experience, Iggy and Draymond and Klay and that length, they can make life hard on the great players in this league.
Don't you think Game 3 could be a good opportunity to get the rest of the Raptors involved? You knew that the Warriors are going to be shorthanded most likely. This could be a good time to get the guys that weren't shooting well, give them a little confidence, maybe take a couple minutes for Kawhi where he'd be desperately out there. Because you know this is going to be the only not break, but game where they're not going to be at full strength. The Warriors.
It becomes very, very important, especially that they're backcourt. You talked about putting Kawhi off the ball. If I'm Nick Nurse, I'm not having Kawhi bring the ball up anymore. Kawhi is a great one-on-one player, but they're not. The Warriors are not going to let you play one-on-one basketball, i.e. Houston, James Harden, the point guard, take the ball out of his hand, all right, i.e. Portland. Take the ball out of Damian Lillard's hand, 4-0 sweep. Kawhi is not a point guard, but because Kyle Lowry is struggling, like we need to bring him up. Part of his struggle has really led to Kawhi being able to struggle, because Kyle Lowry should be playing 40 minutes a game. He should be scoring about 18 to 20 points a game. He's not doing those things, making a lot of stupid fouls. So if he's able to bring the ball up, him and Van Vliet, if they're able to bring the ball up, Kawhi can get his mid-range. He can start on the baseline. But if they don't play well, Kawhi Leonard's play will be affected, because he shouldn't have to bring the ball up the court at 6'7", because they are not going to let you play one-on-one basketball. And you have to give a lot of credit to the Golden State Warriors. Since the playoffs, they're playing the elite defense that had them in the finals, all right? And this is the worst defensive team that they've had in 5 years. But in the playoffs, they're playing type of defense that win you a championship.
And I'll add to that, the formula to win was game 1. If you really think of 5 guys in double figures, they moved the ball. I thought Kawhi made great plays late, even though he didn't have a great offensive game, but he made some plays late in that game. And then also you got to figure out, how can I get these other guys open shots? Because they can't get their own shot. Danny Green can't get his own shot. No. That's where you got to count on Kyle Lowry, who's supposed to be your starting point guard. Maybe putting him in the pick and roll and you creating and trying to get those guys a shot. So this got to mix up the offense and putting too much pressure on a guy we don't know. They're saying he's hurt a little bit on Kawhi Leonard to do so much on the offensive end.
And listen, obviously the Warriors, or the Raptors need, in order to beat the 2-time defending champs, they need their second, third, fourth, and fifth best players, at least 3 of those guys in each game, to have a good game, any game they're going to win. But the biggest reason some people were picking the Raptors in this series, I think the biggest reason you guys picked the Raptors in this series, was Kawhi Leonard was coming off back-to-back masterpieces in 7 games against Philly and 6 games against Milwaukee. Against Philly, 35, 10, and 4 and over 50% and great defense. Against Milwaukee, 30, 10, and 4 with elite, best since I've seen since Scottie Pippen perimeter defense. In the finals thus far, it's 29-10-4, 38%, and the defensive impact, because there isn't a Giannis to take out of the game, hasn't been felt as much. If the Raptors are going to win this series, barring more Warriors just falling victim to injury,
there aren't that many left.
Right. They need Kawhi, who has a chance to steal the mantle as the best player alive, to play like it over these next 5 games. Like, that is the Raptors' clearest path. We know he can do it because we saw him do it in the previous 2 rounds. He needs to do it in the NBA Finals.
The NFL season now just 93 days away, Nick. As we take in the landscape, we can't help but focus on Patrick Mahomes. He already faces a ton of pressure to repeat at least part of his success of his MVP season. You know, the year he threw for 50 touchdowns and over 5,000 yards, his first full year as a starter. But according to a column on NFL.com, the Chiefs need to win the Super Bowl for next season to be deemed a successful season. All right, Nick, is it Super Bowl or bust for the Kansas City Chiefs?
I don't think they have to win the Super Bowl for it to be deemed a successful season, but it would feel like that if they don't get to the Super Bowl, it won't be a step forward. That's what happens when you make the conference championship game, when you have the best record in your conference, when you host a conference championship game that goes to overtime.
Yeah, but despite your team changing year after year?
Yeah, but well, the most important two pieces are still there, the quarterback and the coach. And so if the Chiefs this year get knocked out in the second round, that's a disappointment. Now, maybe it shouldn't be, maybe because the NFL's so tough. But if the Chiefs, in year 3 of Patrick Mahomes, year 2 of him starting, they go 11-5 after being 12-4, they don't have home field, and they only get to the second round of the playoffs, of course, that would be a disappointment. You think I'm wrong? You disagree?
I think if you don't have Tyreek Hill, it's a very different season for Patrick Mahomes.
Well,
and then I don't think you can say that going 11-5 is a disappointment.
Well, I don't think you can pencil him in for 50 touchdowns and 5,000 yards. I don't know that he will ever do that again in his career. It was one of the 3 most productive quarterbacking seasons ever. But I think for teams that get this close and are bringing back the majority of their roster that spent a lot of money to upgrade that defense, the weakness on the team, of course you want to get to the next step. So I don't think getting to the Super Bowl and losing, I disagree with that part of the column. I don't think they get to the Super Bowl and lose. You're like, oh, year's a disappointment. I don't think they have to win the championship for this seat or else it's a bust. But yeah, of course, a step backwards is a step backwards. I feel that way about the Chiefs. I think right now the New Orleans Saints are feeling like if we don't get to the Super Bowl, it's a disappointing season. The other team to get that close and not make it.
This is funny because we would never ask this question about the most dominant team, and that's New England. We would never. If they lost the Super Bowl, if they lost in the AFC Championship, if they lost in the wild card, if they didn't make the playoffs, Tom Brady. Like after Tom Brady got hurt, we didn't say, if New England don't make the Super Bowl next year, would it be disappointing? All these other NFL teams fall into the trap, and they need more of the New England model. Jenna, we don't know who's going to be out there for them. We don't know what type of injuries they're going to have. We don't know what type of regular season they're going to have. So the regular season determines if you're going to be in the playoffs. Now, if they didn't make the playoffs, it would be disappointing. But we can't put expectations on these NFL teams. There is no league that is like the NFL as far as parity. So every year, we're going to have 5 teams that are going to shock people. Like, that's the way it's been going, and it's going to continue to go that way. You can't put expectations on Patty Mahomes that every game that he plays in, that if he don't make the Super Bowl, then it's a disappointment. No, that's not how this league goes. They need a great regular season. They need to try to be as healthy as possible to try to win their division. They're in, if not the toughest division in football, the second tough division in football, and being able to get through that, get healthy, and Patrick Mahomes continue to develop as a passer, continue to develop as a leader. He hadn't been in a whole bunch of playoff races. Like, he hadn't played a whole bunch of football. He's not a 10-year veteran. He's not on the last 2 years of his contract that he's going to play football. We're going to watch him play, hopefully, for a long, long time. Don't fall into the trap that the other teams fall into. The Rams, they shouldn't have Super Bowl aspirations. The Saints, they shouldn't have Super Bowl aspirations. It's about trying to get through the regular season as healthy as possible, get yourself a good seeding in the playoff, and whatever happens, that's the way that most NFL teams should go about it. But some of these other teams have fallen into this trap of, it's either Super Bowl or bust. New England, the most dominant team the last 20 years, they never do that.
See, don't you think, though, with most teams, like with the team we talk about the most on the show other than New England, the Cowboys, don't you think with most teams that were a good team last year, that has the same coach, the same quarterback, the same infrastructure in place, that you go into the year, if you're a fan of the team or if you're talking about the team, with that their expectations are to go at least one step further than they did the previous season?
No, the first goal is to try to get back to where you were. I have never been in the NFL locker room or heard any tape, anyone, the coach say, you know something? We made it this far. We're going to start out where our goal is we got to be one. No, give yourself that chance. That's what every team, if you've had success in the NFL, can I get back to give myself the opportunity to be successful? It's not necessarily success always setting it up as, it's the next step. No, they need to be able to get to that position, have a healthy roster, try to have home field advantage. They won't have a better advantage than they had last year. So you gotta remove last year. You got to take every game one at a time. They might not win their division. All right? The San Diego Chargers are really, really talented. The Raiders are going to be better. And we know the defense that they're going to have in Denver is going to be top-notch. So, no, don't fall into that trap.
You also have to bake in the fact that teams now have a year of watching Mahomes start under their belt, of knowing what they can game plan for, and maybe he's not as successful. He's not putting up 50 touchdowns.
Well, and the thing that you mentioned at the top,
Nick doesn't expect that.
Right. I think that was a special season, and one of the reasons that he had that many touchdowns, the defense was so bad. Like, there's a reason that the highest scoring offenses, I got the list of the 12 highest scoring offenses in NFL history of the Super Bowl era. You know what they all have in common? None of them won the Super Bowl. Because usually you're that high scoring because you're on the field a bunch because your defense can't get stopped.
When we went 15-1, we did not. When we came back, we did not set a goal that we want to get one step closer. It was no. We understood you must win your division. You want to have a home playoff game. If you can get the number 1 seed, you want to get. We never able to get the number 1 seed again. So now if I don't get the number 1 seed, so now my goals change? No, the NFL, man, is about parity and getting in the tournament. If I get in, this is not the NBA. This is not any of those other tournaments. If I get in and I'm in it from a wild card spot, we have seen teams do it. That's why the NFL is so special. That's why every year is a story in itself.
Time for stories to start your morning. Free agent defensive tackle Gerald McCoy signed a 1-year deal with the Panthers. McCoy starred my favorite show, Hard Knocks, in 2017. Just thought I'd throw that in there. Spent the last 9 seasons with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. What do you think, CC? You think Gerald McCoy makes an impact, a big impact?
How about this, Jenna? Just got off the phone with defensive coordinator Eric Washington, and they are thrilled. They thought they were going to lose him potentially to Cleveland. He fell in love with their facility. They believe they have the best interior, especially defensive front, in the NFL. They believe they're going to get back to playing dominant football, Cam Newton being healthy, and they got to create some turnovers with that secondary. It starts up front. So he's very excited about, man, looking at Carolina. They're an every other year team. Watch for them to be back this year.
Dontari Poe, K1 Short. We know the linebackers led by KLAY if he can stay healthy. Now you have Gerald McCoy, one of the most underrated players in the league. You know how much I like Eric Washington. I talked to him at was it the Super Bowl a couple years ago? I don't remember where we were, but I remember
All-Star baseball game.
That's right. The baseball All-Star. That's right. Last year.
I remember that.
And so listen, you said earlier, every year there's at least 5 teams that go from out of the playoffs to in the playoffs. I believe Carolina is going to be one of them, thanks to the defensive upgrades and Cam Newton getting healthy.
And Jenna, you'll like this. Not a problem. Great locker room guy.
She
great
knows that.
leader. Very consistent.
Hard Knocks.
Family guy.
Love this guy. To the NBA now, according to reports, Kawhi Leonard is being slowed down by a knee issue, which stems from him overcompensating for a quad injury. The same right quad injury that forced him to miss all but 9 games last year in San Antonio. So even though he may not be 100%, does Toronto need even more from Kawhi moving forward?
Well, it's hard to do more, and a lot of times when you're in competitive situations like this, when you try to do more, it forces you into making mistakes. They need Kawhi to try to be a little more efficient. When they double team him, can he be more aggressive instead of backing off the double team? Can he split it and get on the offensive attack? But it's about getting his other players involved with his playmaking ability and cut down his turnovers. I don't believe he's going to shoot 58% like he did the first 3 rounds. But if he can get back to shooting 50% from the field, 40% from the 3-point line, Toronto is going to win this series, Jenna.
If he can get to 50-40 the rest of the way, I would agree with you. Right now, I think, man, it's the finals. I think he'd take 45-35 the rest of the way. I think, listen, Steph and Kawhi, if both, given the injuries for the Warriors, the inconsistency of the Raptors supporting cast, both teams need their best player, their star player, to step up huge in Game 3. The Raptors, because it's on the road and you don't want to all of a sudden fall down 2-1. The Warriors, because they're down so many people. Those 2 guys combined to be 1 of 6 in the 4th quarter of Game 2.
Do you think whichever one of those players and their team wins becomes the favorite for the MVP moving forward?
Oh, absolutely. 100%. Game 3, first swing game of the NBA Finals.
All right, so with all the injury talk surrounding Golden State, Steph Curry has quietly led this team through the start of the series. As the Warriors head back to Oracle for Game 3, Steph is the heavy betting favorite to win MVP, with Kawhi and Draymond having the next best odds. Nick, has Curry been the most valuable player through 2 games?
Through 2 games, it's very, very close. I would give it to Draymond. I thought Draymond was sensational in game 2, and you are going to weight it more heavily a game your team won. And so Kawhi was good, but not great in game 1. That's the game Toronto won. Steph was very good in game 1, but his team lost. So I would give it to Draymond as of this moment. But if the Warriors are going to win the series, it's hard for me to see a scenario of them winning the series without Steph being great the rest of the way.
I know Jenna's into it. Steph would be the sexier choice. And she likes the name. Her partner's name is...
I didn't understand what was happening.
We got
for a
it. Yeah,
second.
Jenna,
I
you
checked
like
out,
Steph.
came back in. I like
But
Steph.
right now, Draymond has played better. He was very good in game number 1. Then he isolated himself on, I'm going to slow down Siakam in game number 2. He was very special in that game. To me, Draymond Green, Steph's right on his heels, though.
All right, let's move on and talk about the Lakers.
Rejoin us.
A disastrous season behind them. They're hoping to turn things around this off season with speculation swirling over who could possibly join LeBron James as his number 2, even his 1A this coming year. According to a column in Bleacher Report, Anthony Davis would be the best possible target, with Kyrie and Kemba coming in at 2 and 3. All right, Nick, who's a more ideal teammate for LeBron, AD or Kyrie Irving?
I think Anthony Davis is the best option for the Lakers. I think Kyrie is the best option for LeBron.
For LeBron.
Because there are 2 different timelines we're talking about here. Who do I believe is more likely to still be an elite NBA player 5 years from now, 6 years from now, maybe 8 years from now? Anthony Davis. Who do I know next year you could plug into the NBA, Western Conference Finals, NBA Finals, however far you get, and the moment will not be too big for him, that his game will match up with LeBron perfectly? Kyrie Irving. And so these are, I think Anthony Davis is a better, if you were building a team starting from scratch, you could have either one. I don't think there's a team in the league that would take Kyrie over Anthony Davis because you're thinking about long term. But we haven't seen Anthony Davis in really any high leverage situations in his career, only been past the first round once, has 5 playoff wins, not series wins, playoff wins in his career. We've never seen Anthony Davis at any level of basketball not be, maybe that 1 year at Kentucky, maybe, but not be the focal point of his team. That year at Kentucky, he was the best player, but he was more of a defensive force. I don't know how that fits with LeBron. I think it fits well. I'm not worried about how it would fit, but I know Kyrie fits perfectly. So for the very specific question of who's the best option to play with LeBron, I'd go with the guy that I know it works, Kyrie.
I totally disagree with you. I don't believe it to be Anthony Davis because also the compensation. I'm going to lose a lot of my roster and a lot of these young players. So it's not only can he be able to play in 3-5 years. I don't believe there's a future. I don't think there's a team that says, what am I going to be like in 5 to 8 years? So I just go back to reality. It's typically like 1 to 3, and if you extend that, it's about 3 or 4 years. That's like the life right now.
And that's the length of an NBA contract.
So for me, it would be Klay. Klay Thompson would be the best fit for LeBron James.
More than Anthony Davis or Kyrie. More than either
because of the roster with AD first, and you have to trade for him. All right, Klay, you don't have to do that. Also, you're getting Klay from Golden State. So now I got another team in the West that I'm immediately better than them. Right from free agency. I just believe from a defensive standpoint, if Klay misses Wednesday's game, would that be the first playoff game he missed in his career?
Yeah.
And how many?
120 of 120.
Okay. Klay is a basketball junkie. I believe in 5 years, Klay is still shooting jump shots right in your face. Defensively, it's going to take the burden off LeBron. And I don't believe LeBron is going to do what he's got to do as he gets older, and that's going to the post, going a little more. I believe LeBron is going to dominate. As he gets older, he's going to dominate the basketball more, dribble the basketball more, and he's going to need someone to build run-off screens so he can be a playmaker. And if that is not Klay Thompson, I don't know what I've been watching in the NFL. Klay Thompson is the best pure fit for the Lakers and LeBron James.
I also think we just dismiss it as a gimme that Kyrie wants to go back and play with LeBron again. I know he did it, but I don't think he's a perfect fit. It worked out for a little bit and then didn't work out. And I think it would be Kyrie.
It always worked out on the court. It never didn't work out on the court.
Well, it didn't work out on the court when he left the court that LeBron was playing on.
Oh, you mean when LeBron went to the bench and how well the team? Listen.
No, I mean when Kawhi left Cleveland.
Oh yes, absolutely. Listen.
Because of Kyrie's wanting.
Kyrie left Cleveland because he wanted to go venture out on his own, and if he enjoys that.
And he realized the world wasn't flat.
Right. And now if he enjoys that, he doesn't have to stay in Boston to stay with that. He can go to Brooklyn. Kyrie can go to Brooklyn and get everything he wanted in Boston that didn't work out for him and do it in New York, and that might be what he opts to do. But on the court, we know LeBron and Kyrie work. I do think KLAY would fit perfectly as well. And the defense part of KLAY is a huge one. I wasn't even baking in the undercutting the Warriors. If we're going to add that.
Yeah, that was a little sneaky pool.
Okay, that was. I mean, if we're going to add the math of you're going to under the Warriors going to lose KD.
Yeah, that's why I don't do the production meetings and everything. I let y'all do the talking.
But let me ask you real quick. Of those top two, of the two guys Jenna initially asked about, Anthony Davis or Kyrie, if you could pick one.
I got to go with AD, man.
That's what I thought.
I got to go because there is no answer for him in the West. There's an answer for Kyrie. His name's Steph Curry.
Hey, FS1 is your destination for the day's best sports shows. Tune in for the biggest personalities on the biggest stories. We get you started here on First Things First. Catch it on Monday through Friday only on FS1. Back here talking Warriors with Antoine Walker. Klay Thompson is questionable for Wednesday's Game 3 with a strained hamstring, and Kevon Looney is likely done for the series and therefore the season with a chest fracture, and still no word on KD's status, and Game 3 is tomorrow night. All right, let's focus on Klay. Antoine, how would his absence change Golden State's offense?
It would hurt them tremendously because you got to think about the pressure that's going to be on Steph. To try to play through this gimmick defense, because I'm sure Toronto will come with the same type of gimmick defense, whether it's a boxing one, they will trap him. So it'll be much harder for Steph to create shots for himself. And then you put a lot of pressure on Draymond Green and Andre Iguodala to perform at a high level offensively. They have to be aggressive. Their shot attempts will have to go up. And then you actually got Quinn Cook, who's played very, very well in the 2 years he's been with Golden State in spot minutes, to play big minutes now. You get small in the backcourt. You force Steph Curry to have to play a little bit more defense now. You can't hide him as much on the defensive end now. He's going to have to guard those point guards, and while they're making plays, you can't really hide him. So it's going to be tough. It'll be a very tough game for Golden State to find scoring. And when have we ever said that about Golden State?
And that's why it's so tough, Antoine, because it's going to be tough for them to find scoring. And as you mentioned, their defense gets so much worse without KLAY. The Quinn Cook, if people don't know who he is, he was with the Warriors. The idea is he's going to be a very poor man Steph Curry. An offense-only knockdown shooter that can move without the basketball. Now, that's not an insult to Steph Curry or Quinn Cook. Steph Curry, you mentioned one of the 5 greatest point guards ever. Quinn Cook's trying to find his way in this league. But I say that to say this. He is not a good defensive player. And one of them is going to have to guard Kyle Lowry if Klay's out.
One little correction about Quinn Cook. He's an on-the-ball defender. He can press you in the backcourt, be a nuisance on you getting the ball up the court. But once you get to that part, that's his number one skill.
Other than three-point shooting, sure. But I think one of the reasons, I
just want to let people know as far as, because you'll see him in the backcourt pressing
pressure
people.
Guy's 94 feet.
Yes.
But I think one of the reasons he's been able to do that when we've seen him is because if you're only going to be playing 8 to 12 minutes, then while you're out there, you go full exhaustion. If now all of a sudden you're starting, you're going to have to be running off these screens. Then you can't. That's why you don't ask guys typically that are big parts of your team, pressure guy 94 feet, because that is exhausting in the NBA. The Warriors have only played 8 games in the last 3 years where KD and KLAY missed. They've won seemingly, amazingly, 3 of them. But those 3 came against the 2018 Phoenix Suns. The 2018 Phoenix Suns were so good, they got the number 1 pick of the draft. The 2018 Atlanta Hawks, that team was so good, they got the number 3 pick of the draft. And last year's New Orleans Pelicans, at the end of the season, after Anthony Davis had been not shut down entirely, but they were using him very sparingly. They don't have experience beating anyone of relevance. Not that they have much experience at all playing without these 2 guys. I just don't think they can create enough offense if Klay and KD are out. Vegas clearly thinks one of them's playing. Vegas has the Warriors as 6-point favorites. That would be a bananas line if both these guys miss.
But even if Klay plays, you're not getting 100% of Klay, and you're not getting all the minutes. And if KD plays, you're not getting, even if you did get 80% of KD, you're certainly not getting all the minutes. So in some capacity, their offense is going to be hampered.
Oh, yeah, it's going to be a lot of pressure on Steph. I think you made a great point as far as Iggy and Draymond. They have to get in the mix. We saw once KD got hurt, Draymond initially he knew, I have to play different. He talked about it. Our style's going to be different. And now with Klay, they're going to have to make another adjustment. But if I'm Nick Nurse, I like Danny Green. Like him, respect him and everything, but he's getting ready to play less minute. I'm getting ready to go huge, man. I'm getting ready to have Kyle Lowry play the point. I'm putting Kawhi at the 2. All right? Siakam at the 3. Serge Ibaka at the 4. Marc Gasol at the 5. And I'm getting ready to pound Golden State. If they decide to put that lineup in there, you put Quinn Cook in there. Now, because he's an actual 5'10", Nick. Not like me playing with your height. All right? Like he is not a big guy. Steph's not a physical guy. You know that they're going to play bigger in Golden State because all they got is Bogut and Boogie. They're not going to play Looney. They're not going to play small. They're not going to play Jordan Bell. So if I'm Nick Nurse, that's what I'm doing. I'm getting ready to pound Golden State with that big lineup and put that pressure on their backcourt.
Because they become much easier to guard, obviously, when Klay out the lineup. So you can do that and play a bigger lineup and still be able to rotate and get to your spots. I think it still will be for the Raptors offensively where they're going to find the scoring and take advantage of these mismatches, because now you got to take advantage. Because now you force him. Boogie's going to have to be a little bit more active on the offensive end. I don't know if Boogie's still quite there yet to get in the post and score in the block.
Right.
Yet. He's not there yet.
That's probably the last part of your game that will come.
And Steve Kerr will probably go with Sean Livingston a little bit more, but that's actually works in Toronto's favor to me, having Sean Livingston on the floor, because he's not the same offensive player he was a couple years ago.
And he will never shoot a 3. I mean, he and Ben Simmons almost identical 3-point attempts.
Right.
Like, he will never shoot a 3.
And they threw him the ball late in the game, 15 seconds, ball touched his hand, he got it ripped of it.
Right. He doesn't want to, he didn't want to go to the line there, and he's not going to shoot 3s. Let's just for a moment here, because I don't think Golden State can win if Klay's out. If he's limited, I think they can win because he at least adds spacing. Even if he's not 100%, you have to respect him. You're going to have to guard Klay Thompson's shot till the day he retires. But you mentioned the box and one. Obviously, the Warriors will watch film. They will find ways to attack it. But until the Warriors show they can beat it, even when Klay plays, there's 16 minutes a game that either Steph or Klay are on the court by themselves without the other guy. Final 4 minutes of the first 4 minutes of the second, there's an 8-minute stretch when Klay gets his rest and Steph gets his rest, and the same thing third to fourth quarter. If you're Toronto, don't you unveil that as soon as one of those guys goes out and see if they can figure it out? Like, see if they have figured out a way to attack that box and one?
Oh, without question. You got to – this is a must – for Toronto, unfortunately, you hate to say that in the third game of a series, but regardless if they're healthy or not, this is a must-win situation. You have to leave this game with a win. You have to put out all the stops, do whatever it takes to get this win. You cannot let a 75% Golden State team win a game on you.
Yeah, you don't deserve to win the championship.
You have to make them beat you. You can't beat yourself. They're going to have to come out and with the right energy, the right focus, understand mismatches. We talked about it earlier about Kawhi. How can Kawhi help his team out? We got to find the mismatches because it's going to be a lot now. Because with Klay out there, you're taking a huge defensive piece away. Obviously, we know Kevin not being out there is a big defensive player. But Iggy's still hurt. You know, he's not 100%.
Yes.
You can attack him, obviously. And Boogie's not 100%. You can attack him. They got to take advantage of those mismatches.
One thing Golden State needs to remember, in securing the Bucks series, what did Toronto do? They went to a janky defense. They played the 3-2 zone. All right, and the only difference in the 3-2 zone and what they're playing now is the guy doesn't stay at the top because he's roaming with Steph. But they're still playing the 2-2 zone that they played against Milwaukee. So I expect to see a lot of that in game number 3. As you mentioned, must win for the Raptors.
Moving on to action on the court with all the talk about injuries to Klay, KD, and Kevon, and I'm seeing a pattern there. Steph Curry has quietly led the Warriors through the start of this series, and as it heads back to Oracle for Game 3, he is the heavy betting favorite to win MVP, with Kawhi and Draymond having the next best odds. Antoine, has Steph Curry been the most valuable player this series through 2 games?
No, I think it's Draymond Green. I think, one averaging pretty much a triple-double. What he does for them defensively, as well as what he does for them offensively, has been tremendous in this series. I know the first game didn't look as great, but still was a triple-double. He still had his input on the game. We know Siakam went off, but he did take accountability for that. But he wasn't on Siakam that much.
Yes, in Game 1.
I think if you look at Steph's game, I think Game 1, even though the numbers look really good, but Steph got to the foul line while he was in the penalty. I don't really count that. It wasn't really a spectacular 30-point
What you're talking about there is there's one thing to hit the foul line because you draw a shooting foul.
But he was
another thing when you're out dribbling the ball and somebody
fouls you. I think he got like 6 free throws just doing that. And then Game 2, I mean, obviously he disappeared. Obviously in the first half and then the fourth quarter. I mean, the first quarter and the fourth quarter, he disappears in those games. And Draymond's been the most consistent player. So I would say Draymond's the MVP right now after 2 games.
I think, too, we got to give Draymond credit. We don't give enough defensive player, two-way players credit. But if a guy is an energy guy, like if he's the one going to get the team going, like you got to be able to give him credit for that. I just think Draymond does so many little intangibles that take the grunt work away from people like Steph. Iggy, what he's going to do, it benefits Steph. So to me, the most valuable player, would they be down 2-0 without Steph? Yeah, they probably would. But Draymond Green, we know that they would be down 2-0.
Well, the other thing, fair or not, and I think it is fair, even if they won Game 2 as they did, if that technical with a minute left, if Draymond had done that, what would the narrative have been?
Boogie.
If the announcer just gave it to Boogie.
Oh, absolutely.
The announcer just said, Mike Brady.
I got 2 students. Someone threw a spitball. Got to be that guy.
Exactly right. The announcer just gave it to Boogie, and then they saw it. And that was, I don't want to be hyperbolic here. Man, if that ball, which it damn near did, hit the ref on the way down, that would have been a disaster for them because he'd have gotten thrown out for that. That would have been 2 technicals. Like, it was just a impossibly dumb moment from such a smart player in Steph. But your point on the first and fourth quarters, Game 2, the first quarter from Steph, he's 0 of 3 from the field, 0 of 3 from 3, 4 points, 2 rebounds, 1 assist. That's a bad quarter. You know what's a worse quarter? The fourth quarter of game number 2. 0, 0, 0. 0 field goal attempts, 0 points, 0 rebounds, 0 assists, 2 fouls, and a technical. Like, now, people can say, well, they were playing that box.
Kyle Lowry was out of the fourth quarter most of the time.
Right, he had foul trouble. Van Vliet has been giving him a lot of problems defensively. I think Steph, by the way, so I agree with him. I think through 2 games it's Draymond, but they don't award this through 2 games. I think Steph is the best bet. I think the Warriors are going to win the finals, and given the injuries to everyone, Steph's going to have to take on a bigger load. But I also want the audience to understand, man, Steph is as close as a player has come to winning finals MVP ever without winning it. In 2015, the year he won regular season MVP, Antoine, he averaged more points per game in the finals than he did the regular season. When those votes came out, it was 4 for LeBron, 4 for Iggy, 3 for Steph. And the 7 voters is what's been reported. I obviously wasn't one of them. I wasn't there. They came together and said, well, we can't have a tie. And we all obviously think it should be a Warrior. And since Iggy was up 4-3, they recast their ballots, and they all switched to Iggy. So the final voting there was 7 for Iggy, 4 for LeBron, 0 for Steph. Steph, to me, the best argument for that finals MVP was for LeBron, but if a losing player is not going to get it, Steph had a great argument for MVP that year, and then this is much more of a moot point about Steph and his legacy and MVP of the finals.
But Antoine, doesn't the job become so much harder now for Steph? Because if he's the only real shooter out there, most of Toronto's focus is going to be on Steph Curry. I mean, how is he going to even get open, much less be able to put numbers up?
Well, if Toronto wants to win this series, you got to continue to play a boxing one, gimmick defense, trap him. I'm not going to lose this series with Steph Curry going off for 35 a night. He's going to have to work every night for us. So that opens it up for Draymond Green, who's made great plays. When they double team, he's versatile enough where he can make the right play. Even just the pass, I thought those 2 alley-oop passes to Andrew Bogut was huge.
Oh, my God.
Finding those guys and getting open shooters. Those are the things that kind of stand out to to make Draymond Green the MVP so far because he's making those plays because they're going to take Steph out the game. I love their strategy. I love the fact that Toronto is not going to let Steph Curry beat them. They want other guys to step up and beat them. This is the best formula, especially if Kevin Durant's not going to play. This is the best formula to beat Golden State.
And one thing, international soccer does something, they have man of the match. If you looked at these NBA Finals through 2 games, the man of the match in Game 1 would have been Pascal Siakam, without any question. 14 of 17, 32 points.
Yeah.
The man of the match in the second game would have been Draymond Green. 17, 10, and 9, outstanding defense, taking Siakam away, all of a sudden getting the Warriors going on the fast break. Kawhi and Steph, the best players on both teams, and if you want to argue Steph, KD, well, KD's not playing. Neither one of those guys, I don't think anyone would argue would have been man of the match in Game 1 or 2, nor would Klay have been. Klay was on pace in Game 2 to potentially get it, but then he got hurt. And so right now it's been not Siakam and Draymond are more important than just bench guys or role guys, but not your frontline players, not the guys who are on the graphic when they're advertising the next game. They don't show their face, but they've been. Pascal was the best player in Game 1. I think Draymond was the best player in Game 2.
Thank you for listening to the First Things First podcast. Remember, leave us a review and tell us what you think. Subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts and catch us on FS1 Monday through Friday, 6:30 a.m. Eastern. For Cris Carter and Nick Wright, I'm Jenna Wolfe. So long, everybody.